Hello, everyone, and a blessed Holy Week to you all. This is Pastor Ryan Pronzinski of Christ Lutheran Church in Michigan Center, Michigan, and this is my Chair Chats daily devotional for Monday, April 6th, 2020, the Monday of Holy Week in Lent Year A. As a reminder, these videos are intended to be a way in which you can engage your faith during this time of pandemic, social distancing, quarantining, etc., where you're probably unable to attend in-person worship, go to Bible studies like usual, pick up your normal devotional materials, go to small groups, etc. So I'm hoping that this tool helps you to continue to engage your faith not only in general, but with this pandemic in mind as well. Please feel free to leave constructive comments, questions, or prayer requests in the comments section below this video, and I promise you that I will get back to those in the following videos. With regard to the readings themselves, they come from the Daily Revised Common Lectionary, so I'm not picking these myself. They come at random, and I talk about them off the top of my head with as much experience as I have as a pastor to try and help you engage your faith. You can find the Daily Revised Common Lectionary texts online. I've been using my Evangelical Lutheran Worship book, which has the schedule in the back to find them. The texts for today are Psalm 36, verses 5 through 11, Isaiah 42, verses 1 through 9, and John chapter 12, verses 1 through 11. Before I continue on with the readings, I just want to remind you all, firstly, Thursday will be a special chair chat in that it will be a little different. I'm only going to do one reading. It will be the Maundy Thursday reading. And then I will have a special prayer litany that will be said during the chair chat that I highly encourage you all to copy and paste into a document that you can do with me then. It'll be in the description, the litany itself. And so we are going to take some time on Thursday to bless the feet of those who are serving us right now, just as Jesus served and washed the feet of the disciples on Maundy Thursday. And then on Friday, we have a Good Friday service that we will live stream from the church. And then, of course, on Sunday, we have our Easter service that we will live stream with Facebook Live as well. The link to our Facebook Live streams is in the description below. And so I encourage you to join us on Good Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard and on Sunday morning at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard for Easter. Also, I'll be making mention of Care for Creation today. There will also be another link to the ELCA's, that is the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, which I am a part of, their social statement on caring for creation. Okay, so now on to the readings, beginning first with Psalm 36, verses 5 through 11, which reads as follows. Your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. Your righteousness is like the mighty mountains. Your judgments are like the great deep. You save humans and animals alike, O Lord. How precious is your steadfast love, O God. All people may take refuge in the shadow of your wings. They feast on the abundance of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your delights. For with you is the fountain of life. In your light we see light. Oh, continue your steadfast love to those who know you, and your salvation to the upright of heart. Do not let the foot of the arrogant tread on me, or the hand of the wicked drive me away. Here ends the reading. In the psalm, we hear about God's steadfast love reaching to the furthest bounds of our imagination and then even beyond that. That is what is meant when the psalmist says that God's steadfast love reaches, quote, to the heavens. To the heavens means beyond what we can see and imagine. And so with this theme of God's steadfast love being broader and more inclusive than we can often imagine, the line that stands out for me today in this psalm is this one. Quote, "You save humans and animals alike, O Lord." As we get ready to celebrate Easter in less than a week, yes, that's this coming Sunday, we easily remember that God's salvation is for me and you, for us human beings. However, our imagination often, quite possibly sinfully, forgets that salvation, God's salvation given as free gift, isn't just for us humans, it's for all of creation. All of God's creatures, right? And so right now, we are overjoyed about our own salvation. That is the hope of having new life with God that is given to us in Jesus. And we share this joy of new life in many ways, right? We feed the hungry, we clothe the naked, we heal the sick, and we serve and support the weak, amongst many other things. All of this is done out of joy and thanksgiving for the ways that God feeds us and clothes us and heals us and serves and supports us, right? That is all part of God's salvation given to us, right? And we often do a great job of living out of the joy of this salvation for other human beings. And we do this through, food pantries, rummage sales, blood pressure clinics, giving rides to doctor's appointments and the store, delivering goods and services to our neighbor, amongst all sorts of stuff, right? And these are all good things. I want to stress that. These are all good things. Don't stop doing them. However, from my experience, one way we often overlook sharing in the joy of salvation is by sharing this joy with the rest of creation. That is, plants and animals, the soil, and the various water sources that we depend on for life. Like, yes, we need all of this. If we don't have it, and it's all part of God's creation too, we die. And that is no longer salvation. And so the psalmist reminds us that not only should our joy of salvation inspire us to love other humans, which it should, but the rest of creation as well, right? God's salvation that is given to us freely in Jesus Christ should inspire us to not only share the joy of that salvation in serving other people, but also serving and caring for all of creation that Jesus died for. And so with care of creation in mind, we live in a really interesting time. I'm going to try and bring it to the here and now. So right now, most planes aren't flying, most cars aren't driving, and many factories aren't churning and burning chemicals and materials these days, many of them necessary for our life as human beings. I'm trying to be very descriptive here, not judgmental, just talking about what's happening right now. And then the results of this, all of this stuff kind of stopping, they're literally visible via satellite. It's crazy. The air is cleaner, and people, animals, and plants are breathing easier. They were talking about this on the news. It's just kind of this fluky thing. And so what that made me think of, right, this cleaner air and all of this stopping and people and all of creation breathing easier, is when the psalmist says, "In your light we see light." Right? And so I wonder, as the world's economy, right, is forced to pause, because that's what's happening right now, how are we human beings seeing our relationship to the rest of the world in a new light? Right? Just like these satellite images of the air being cleaner, and not even just satellite, like camera images of cities where the smog is usually so thick, people needed to wear masks just to keep the bad stuff out of their lungs. Like, they don't need to do that anymore. It's breathable again. So how are we human beings seeing our relationship to the rest of the world in a new light right now? And how might our actions that have become so routine and thoughtless how might they have been harming ourselves and creation more than we thought? I mean, we've gotten so used to this cycle of burning and churning and driving and flying and doing all this stuff, and now it's stopped, and we're like, dang, like that was having more of an impact than maybe we all realized. And during this time of sudden change and adaptation that we're living in right now, and if your life doesn't feel changed and having to adapt, God bless you. How might we make some permanent changes moving forward that help us continue to see in this new light while the air has been cleared? Right? We're seeing things differently. We've been taken out of the rut and the routine. And so how might God be using this opportunity to help us see God's salvation in a new light, to change our routines, to do things to maybe keep the air clear and clean in ways we hadn't thought of before? What is really necessary? How much driving, flying, burning, and churning, and all of the routine do we need to do, and how much of it do we not need to do? Or maybe we keep doing it, but we really realize we need to adjust the way in which we do it. I don't know. These are all wonderments, right? Because I found it fascinating seeing these satellite images and video casts of the air just being so clear and clean. Of course, as I ask these questions, these are all more societal questions, right? And less personal. And usually devotionals tend to focus on one's personhood, but they're still worth asking. I mean, we are people and persons that live in greater societies, and our actions and our thoughts and how we conduct ourselves should in fact keep society in mind. That is what it means to love one's neighbor as oneself, right? That doesn't just mean an individual person, that means communities, countries. But to bring it back home to one's personhood then, I ask this with pauses in mind and seeing things in new light due to this quarantine. How has this pause in your usual daily routines help you to become more aware of creation around you? How has this pause in your normal daily routines helped you to become more aware of creation around you? Right? You might be doing less driving or going to the store. You might be outside walking more because you can't be outside, say, at the store or the mall or the beach or a restaurant. You might be conducting yourself differently. And so how are you noticing creation in this new light? And as you notice creation in a new light, how are you noticing God's steadfast love in a new way? So as I said in all my other videos, I like to try and answer these. For me, yesterday, just as recently as yesterday, Jen brought to my attention the beautiful flowering of one of the bushes right next to the church. I mean, right next to it, where I've been driving and parking for like nearly 4 years. I mean, it's within my eyesight from my car when I park my car in the lot, and yet I can honestly say that I've never really noticed just how beautiful that bush is until yesterday. And I think for all of us, the three of us, this pause in our normal routines where we're not normally getting the usual altar flowers and things like that, right? Jen thought, well, gee, I work at a nursery. How can we put something beautiful up on the altar? And then there was this bush with these beautiful flowers, and she made an arrangement with it. And that right there helps me remember God's steadfast love for all of creation. Right? Beauty is still coming in creation out of the midst of this chaos right now. So that's how I've seen God and God's steadfast love in a new way during this pause of our usual normalcy. And so I hope as you notice these gifts of creation yourself, that they inspire you to take steps to care for this gift of creation that God has given you. You do not own anything, not even your own life. Everything in creation is a gift from God. And so I hope that as you notice creation in new ways, in a new light during this pause, you are inspired to take care of it better. And to help you do that and to help you continue thinking about this if you would like, I'm going to be posting, as I said earlier, a link to the ELCA's social statement for caring for creation, which we are called to do. And it'll be in the description below. There'll be a link. Lastly, on this topic and psalm, because I know this is kind of long for the psalm, for those of you who do actively seek to care for creation and worry about the well-being of our world, and might even be like, Pastor Ryan, why aren't you saying more to really get people to do more with care for creation, and you worry that people aren't doing enough, I want to share with you again that the psalmist reminds us that God's steadfast love is constantly working to bring life to the furthest reaches of creation, even beyond our own imaginations. Might I even say, even our own anxieties and fears. And this good news that God continues to work beyond our own imaginations and fears about creation is not an excuse for us to not do our part in loving God's creation, but is a message of hope that even when we cannot see God's steadfast love for creation happening, it still is. Just like the 3 days when Jesus is buried in the tomb, and it seemed as though all hope was lost, right? God was still at work, bringing about new life. So in this way, God continues to do the same thing for all of creation, and Jesus is our hope and promise of that truth. All right, so those are my thoughts on the psalm. I hope those are helpful for you today. Next, we have Isaiah 42, verses 1 through 9, which reads as follows. Here is my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry or lift up his voice or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break. In a dimly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not grow faint or be crushed until he has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands wait for his teaching. Thus says God the Lord, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people upon it, and spirit to those who walk in it. I am the Lord. I have called you in righteousness. I have taken you by the hand and kept you. I have given you as a covenant to the people, a light to the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison those who sit in darkness. I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I give to no other, nor my praise to idols. See, the former things have come to pass, and new things I now declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. Here ends the reading. So this is my brief and probably not entirely complete introduction to this type of writing from Isaiah. This type of writing from Isaiah, this is one of what's called Isaiah's servant songs, quote, servant songs. And there are a number of them written throughout the prophet, the book of Isaiah. And so a Christian interpretation to the parts of Isaiah like this that talk about God's servant and suffering servant, the Christian interpretation has often been to associate the servant in these verses to Jesus, who frees us from the bondage of sin and death and brings about justice this way, along with others. However, I'm also going to share with you the Jewish tradition, or a Jewish tradition, often associates the servant in these writings in Isaiah as the servant being Israel, that is the people of God, who are called by God to serve the world by bringing about justice and peace, even if it means suffering for others. So for us, this is going to be Pastor Ryan's personal take on these things, is that I see in these servant songs in Isaiah a both-and scenario, whereby Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, right, God's servant for us, we that are bound and blind are freed and given sight through Jesus. So that's one part of it. And this is done, Jesus being the servant of God for us to give us sight and free us, is done so that by this grace of God, this gift of God, then we might do the same for others. Right? So Jesus serves us, frees us, gives us sight, does justice for us, gives peace to us, so that we might serve, free, give sight to, give peace to, bring justice to others. And so then that's how the Christian tradition and the Jewish tradition start to go into conversation in my mind for Isaiah. And so right now, I imagine many people are having a hard time seeing God right now. There are people out of work. There are people sick and dying. There are people worried about a whole plethora of different things and are probably feeling spiritually bound and having trouble seeing God. And if that's how you feel right now, the promise from God in Isaiah is that God's servant, right, Christ in the world through his people, God will come to you and help you see Jesus. So stay hopeful, my dear friends. Right? Remember that Isaiah is writing at a time when the people are in captivity, in slavery, due to war. And so their circumstances is not the same as ours, but we are in a war of our own, and we are being held captive too. And God promises through his prophet Isaiah that God will come to us and free us and help us see God. For those of you whom Jesus has shown up for, right? For those of you who have seen Jesus today, in new and creative and beautiful ways these days, your call from God today in this text from Isaiah is to be God's servant as Jesus has served you recently, to show how you have seen this living, loving Jesus to others so that they can be set free from what is binding them, from what is blinding them too. And so with that in mind, with God's desire for people who are feeling bound right now to be freed, for those who are feeling blind to where God is at in their life right now, who are in need of sight of that, I ask all of you that have seen Jesus lately, where have you seen Jesus lately? Where have you seen Jesus lately? For me, this might sound really funny, but when you get down to your last 3.5 rolls of toilet paper, something as simple as your members remembering that you said you only had 3.5 rolls of toilet paper left, coming on a Sunday morning and bringing you 4 double rolls of not only cheap stuff but Charmin is that is Jesus Christ right there. That might sound almost ridiculous, but I can't tell you how overjoyed I was to receive that toilet paper yesterday. That was Jesus Christ for me, in a very specific and acute and necessary way yesterday. Jesus also came to me by surprise. And so for the two of you out there that did this, you know who you are. Thank you. In a thank you card and a gift that was sitting outside the sanctuary. I won't say specifically what it is because that might give it away, but you know who you are, and I thank you. You were Jesus to me yesterday in that way too. And then lastly, I had to share some hard thoughts with someone yesterday, and then at the end of the day I was able to hear from my aunt and uncle I hadn't talked to in quite some time in Indiana, and we just sat and talked and laughed and joked about just stupid things like my uncle's a union worker and just this kind of stereotype of, now that he's at home and not working because he's been laid off, Like, he's got projects he needs to do around the house, but like a union worker, he's going to find ways to like stretch out his breaks and take frequent breaks. And we were just laughing and having a good time. And so, that time of fellowship, even if it was simply through FaceTime, was I saw Jesus. Jesus came to me through my aunt and uncle last night. And so then my last question, with this wondering or answering for yourself and others, where have you seen Jesus lately, is this. Having remembered now where you have seen Jesus lately, how might you share this gift of Jesus with others? Remembering how you have seen Jesus lately, how might you share this gift of Jesus with others today? And my answer to that question is, I've just shared with you 3 examples of how Jesus showed up for me through his body, the church, right? Through toilet paper, gifts and thank you cards, and intentional time of fellowship and laughter with family. These are all things that you are capable of discovering and cultivating yourselves. So I hope that the Jesus who comes and serves so that you might be free and full of joy and life, I hope you discover him as well. And I hope you share him with people. Yes, share Jesus with people. It's a good thing. All right, our last reading, John chapter 12, verses 1 through 11. So 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead, back in chapter 11. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. So him being Jesus. Now Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard and anointed Jesus' feet and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" Now he said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and he kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." When the great crowd of the Judeans learned that he was there, they came not only because of Jesus, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests planned to put Lazarus to death as well, since it was on account of Lazarus that many of the Judeans were deserting and were believing in Jesus. Here ends the reading. So this story, there are several different themes in it, but one of the themes that's a part of this story is generosity. Generosity. And an extravagant generosity at that. And so we hear in this story that no gift, no matter how small, rather, there is no gift that is too small or too large when it is given in service and love of Jesus Christ, right? For that is what abundance is. So there's the theme of generosity and abundance today. And that is what abundance is. Giving from a place of feeling as though one either is or has more than enough, right? Abundance is giving and living as though one both is or has more than enough. Even if what one is giving seems like either not enough, like the widow and her 2 pennies in Luke, or today where it seems like it's way too much, right? Both of those mentalities of thinking something is too small or too big, that's scarcity. But receiving it with gratitude and doing it out of an act of love and service for Jesus Christ, because you understand that you and your gift is more than enough. Not too much and not too little, is a sense of abundance, a sense of generosity. And it's this reality of abundance that makes me think of a real life story that I recently just read. So I'm going to retell a story that I think is quite beautiful, and it comes from my friend and colleague, Pastor Beth Wartick of Trinity Lutheran in Tipton, Iowa. You can look up her blog online. I'm going to kind of retell it a little bit. So this is her story, not mine. And it's actually about her son, who has been Jesus for me, I can't tell you how many times. That little kid has just the Holy Spirit ablaze in him. So her 5-year-old son, before this pandemic and quarantining and that, had an opportunity to participate in one of the Evangelical Lutheran Church's learning opportunities called the Generosity Project. The Generosity Project. And it's for families. It's a family-oriented event intended to help people live generously because God is generous, right? And at the event, Beth's little boy learned that, quote, this is what he said and what he learned, that he was created, he is created in the image of a generous God. He is created in the image of a generous God. Now, recently, during all this sheltering in place, Beth's son was off in his room making some noise, and it sounded like he was rummaging through his piggy bank, and later comes out with a handful of coins, which he promptly gives one to his mom and his dad, to which Beth then asks her son, curiously, "Why are you doing this?" To which he replies, "Because, Mom, I have been created in the image of a generous God." Now, if that doesn't just give you chills, when I read that, I was like, that is the most amazing thing ever. I mean, for me, you often think of children being narcissistic and selfish, and, sometimes that's just biologically because they haven't quite developed in their brain the ability to be as empathetic as adults can be. And this just shows you the power of God and the Holy Spirit. And when God's truth is spoken and the Spirit speaks to one's heart, what a little Jesus he was. Why are you giving me what is a lot of money, an extravagant gift to me, dear son, that, as Beth said in her blog post, frankly, I don't need, right? Luke was trying to live out of the truth that he is created in the image of a generous God. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I was trying not to name names, but I did, so I apologize. But, yeah, if that doesn't make your heart leap with joy, I don't know what will. And so for me, having heard this story from Beth about her son, it's like smelling that fragrant aroma, right, of that costly perfume that Mary pours on Jesus' feet. That's what that moment of just being in that space, in that story was for me. It was powerful. It was overwhelmingly so. And this is what generosity does. This is the power of generosity and abundance, right? No matter how big or how small, it's powerful. It's life-giving. It's joyful. And so on Good Friday, we remember Jesus pours out the entirety of God's very self for us and the world. This is God's act of abundance and generosity for you, to tell you that you are more than enough. For God to not only to live for, but to even die for. That is God's love for you in abundance. And that is how God says to you, you are more than enough for my love. And it's for this love and generosity and abundance from God. This is why Mary pours out the perfume on Jesus' feet. This is why Beth's son handed out coins to his family. This is why, This is our reminder that, we are created. We too are created in the image of a generous God. And in Jesus we have been made and given generously and abundantly, so as to be able to give generously and abundantly to others. And the beautiful thing about generosity and abundance is that generosity and abundance brings forth more generosity and abundance. And so with that in mind, I ask how you might give or live generously today, cultivating joy in life. How can you live generously today and cultivate joy in life, just as Beth's son did for me? Again, what a little Jesus he is. And I'll end by saying this, because maybe you are not feeling like you are enough. And with this reading in mind, and with Good Friday coming up in mind, and with who Jesus is in mind, I want to promise to you all, I want to remind you all that, dear friends in Christ, in Jesus, who lives and dies and is raised for you, in Jesus you are and always will be more than enough. And so God bless you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.